Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the championship finale of NRRL. We are here today for round 8 of season 1. This is the Miami Grand Prix. My name is JP, and I am your commentator. Joining me alongside me in the commentary booth is Lewis. Good evening to you, Lewis. How are you doing?
I'm very good. I'm all the better for what is happening tonight. Our title decider, three drivers, 7 points in it. What a finale we've got here.
It's going to be absolutely incredible and a great track in the Miami International Autodrome as well. Great circuit for overtaking, and we see a few new faces here tonight. An all new lineup for Haas with Dinosaur 64 and Harry XIV, the first man out on track. The American outfit looking to fare well at the American track tonight. Lewis, what are your expectations for qualifying then? As you mentioned, 7 points in the championship fight. Sab, our current championship leader, then CRBT, and then Dan. What are you expecting for our 18-minute qualifying session here tonight?
Well, you'd expect those three to be at the top of the pile. They are the most consistent drivers, hence why they are in the position they are in. But I think also it is a very much a pressure situation for them because if they just make a slight mistake here, it's going to mean so much more. Say we have a Dan that locks up into the final corner and then starts fifth instead of third. Every mistake gets magnified so much more, but they have gone through all the rest of the rounds in the season to get to this point, knowing that as the races go on, they are more likely to be in a title fight. So I'd expect those three to be at the top of the pile. And then you have, like I say, our new Haas lineup. They're going to want to be proving everyone that they belong in the upper echelons of this division. So I think it makes for a very, very interesting session. But I would say right now the momentum lies with Sab.
Definitely. He is the championship leader, and all he has to do is finish above BT and Dan, and he will be crowned the inaugural world champion. For BT and Dan, it's more of a fight. They need to beat two drivers in order to become world champion tonight. It is going to be oh so close between all of these drivers, and qualifying is where that battle begins. We are currently watching Harry, who is on a lap, the first to negotiate his way on a flying lap around the Miami International Autodrome, saving a lot of battery for the main straight. Obviously purple in the middle and first sector, as he is the first man to complete a lap, and we will go on board with the Haas into the final couple of corners. Very easy to run a bit wide here, but he hits the apex nicely. Not running it as wide as you'd like, but Harry will go to provisional pole with the first lap of the session, and it is a 1:28.2 for the Haas driver. Next to cross the line will be one of the, that'll be Mikey Boy, I believe. So we will now go over to the Sauber and see if he can dislodge the Haas driver. Meets the apex nicely, runs it out wide as you'd expect out of the final corner, and now through this little right hand kink, which I don't really call a corner. He now comes to the line. 27.6 for Mikey, immediately replaced by a 27.1 for Josh.
Now, that is going to be another problem for those at the top drivers like Josh, Mikey, who have been up there, but maybe haven't had the luck in the races to sustain a proper title fight. So I think it's very unlikely you'll see our top three contenders line up 1, 2, and 3. I would expect that's where they would end up. But as we say, guys like Josh and Mikey will be a big, big looming threat for those in the title fight. Now, one question I want to pose to you here, Jack. We obviously covered Wednesday's Super League race, of which Dan and BT were there. Neither finished. So if you're in their position, is that something weighing on your mind? Because that was a point we made on Wednesday after they didn't finish, of saying that puts arguably even more pressure on them within themselves. If you're in their position right now, you haven't finished in the top tier in the opening race. Does that have any effect on this weekend?
I definitely think it plays a bit of a mental toll. Obviously, that was on Wednesday. Today is Sunday. So they've had a few days to look back at those incidents and see, was that their fault? Was there any doing from their part in it? And it gives them that almost little break that they would need. If we're talking the day after this was, then yes, probably it would be a big, big factor in their minds. But I believe the drivers should have had enough time and should be composed enough if they are really to go on to win the championship here tonight to be able to put that behind them and manage to get that out of the way. We saw Sab, he went P2 with a 27.5. His teammate BT now on a lap. He comes towards the end of the first sector now, and it is a 29.9 split. That is a purple sector 1 for the Alpine driver. So the Alpine working well here in Miami tonight. Ryan Brooks currently in 4th place. You'd expect him to be a contender in the fight for the win here today. Same with Mikey Boy. We've got DGH currently up there. Dan Lovett has just come out the pits to begin his out lap. A lot of drivers are on laps now, though, including those of Dinosaur on his debut, Meldrum, Stoker, Bracey, who goes to P8 with a 130.4. It's a purple sector 2 for BT. He is flying early on in qualifying, and we will go on board with the Alpine towards the final couple of corners now then. Picks his braking point. It's beautifully swung in. He misses the apex by just a tad. A little snap of oversteer on the exit. Is it going to be enough for BT to take provisional pole? No. It is a 27.2 for BT. He dislodges his teammate, which, to be fair to him, that's all he really needs to do.
That lap didn't... I don't know about you. I was watching that from around the 2nd sector onwards. That did not look like a very stable lap. He's done very well to get that second there, but he looked very much like he was fighting the car there. So if he can iron out those mistakes, I absolutely think he could get another 3, 4, potentially even 5 tenths in that car. Because, I mean, I'll ask you the question now. I was watching that. That didn't look like the car was fully to his liking there.
No, it did look very shaky, I must admit. I was only on board out of the final corner, but it did look like he's got a lot of oversteer dialed into that car. So very on the nose is BT's Alpine. That will be a difficulty to struggle, but with setups that are on the nose, if you can extract it, you can gain massive amounts of lap time. As we now join Dan Lovett on his flying lap, and he's coming towards the end of the 2nd sector now. Tips it in left, looks tight and neat. The setup looks very stable from Dan Lovett. He's not the best in qualifying, is Dan. He does sometimes struggle a bit for qualifying pace. The races is where he makes it up, and obviously that's why he is one of the contenders in the championship fight. It's a 1 minute 2.5 for the middle sector split, and he now races down this massive long back straight we've got and towards the final couple of corners. Brakes just before the 100 meter board. Gets it tipped in nicely. The car working well. Little bit of wheel spin under traction, but nothing that will harm him too much. Dan Lovett now comes to the line, and it is 5th place for Dan. So all of the championship contenders setting their laps. It's BT from Sab from Dan.
And it's very, very interesting when you see BT and Sab, the two Alpine teammates who are in the fight, will be lining up not next to each other, but very, very close. And where does that play for Dan's mind to be a driver behind? Because if he can at least get 4th, should 2nd and 3rd not change, he would at least be alongside one of them. However, Mikey is not an easy driver to overtake, and his Williams teammate Ryan will be all over him if he gets the chance to, as you would expect. So Dan, that is not the ideal position for him. I would even argue that pole potentially isn't the ideal position. I think BT is in a good position at the moment to take that second if he can get that good start and take the lead. If Josh is still in second and Sab hasn't got him, that massively plays in to BT's hands. But if you're Dan, you're going to be very, very desperate to get at least a place higher, to be on some level of even footing with your rivals. Because the last thing you want to do in his position is to have to fight somebody else and risk, because you have to just get on with it. You have that sense of urgency, is have a risk, isn't it?
Exactly. That is the one thing that can play dividends in a championship fight, is that the desperation can start to creep in for some of the drivers. And as soon as that desperation creeps in, you are driving with aggression and you are not driving to your peak performance. You are overdriving the car, which if you are new to Formula One or even league racing, that may sound a little silly saying that you can overdrive the car, but there is such a pinpoint limit to these vehicles, and if you overdrive it, you can easily make a mistake, go into the wall, hit another car, spin round, and immediately that is your race on the back foot. And then you might be driving with even more aggression and more desperation, and those issues only compound themselves to the point where you are just not driving at all. Oh, we've
Absolutely.
got a crash there. Sorry to interrupt you, Lewis. We've got Harry, who is round on his outlap. He has literally just come out of the pits in the first couple of corners, and he has spun it into the wall. No front wing for the Haas driver, out on new tyres, and he will now be returning to the pits, seeking a new front wing.
I can't say I saw what happened there, but that is very, very disappointing. On his outlap, luckily, as we say, he should have enough time to come back in, fix the damage, and set his last lap. But what does that do for the confidence of Harry after a fairly okay first lap? But as we said last week or on Wednesday with, I can't remember the name of the driver, who was making mistakes in qualifying. I believe it was Sean, wasn't it? Who
Yes.
kept on having problems in qualifying. It is better that you have these mistakes here so you know what not to do in the race. Because obviously the race, if you make a mistake there, and then, well, you don't have a chance to resurrect it. But the point I was going to make with the overdriving is, if you're somebody like Dan, the reason why it's going to be dreadful for him to be behind someone, especially Mikey in P4, as you say, it may sound like a silly thing to say overdrive to somebody who hasn't seen it. But if you're Dan, if you're stuck behind Mikey for 5, 10, 15 laps, those first few laps of the race, when you know it's only a 57 lap race and it's a difficult track to overtake on Miami, and you see BT and Sab get further and then you start braking a slight bit later, try your moves, and it only increases your chances of making a mistake and then crashing. So a bit like Alonso in 2010, he couldn't get past and started to overdrive, and it just didn't work for him. So it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because if you don't push the limit, then you're not going to get past. But how far is said limit?
Exactly that. While you were talking about that, Lewis, Ryan Brooks split the two Alpines. So that will be music to BT's ears as Sab falls another position, as does Dan. Ryan Brooks up to third, right in the Alpine sandwich there. And BT will be grinning as he sees that all unfold in front of him. Bracy is now on his second flying lap and coming through what we call the Mickey Mouse chicane. Now tips it in left. Get a good exit here because the drive out of here is so important onto this straight. He is down, up on his lap, sorry. So this could be an improvement from 11th place for Bracy. The V-Carb man who is charging towards the final couple of corners gets it tipped in. A little bit wide of the apex there. Shouldn't cost him too much time. Really takes a lot of the sausage curb as he now comes around the final corner and invalidates at the final corner, trying to cut a little bit too much over the line. That lap will not count.
And that lap, very lucky for Dan there, that lap would have put him just in front of Dan. He'd have dropped down to P7. But whilst you were watching the most of that lap, there was contact between a Mercedes and Meldrum down in the middle of Sector 2. I believe there was damage, not critical, but certainly something to keep an eye on there. I can't say I saw fully what happened. I saw the collision and the carbon fibre fly up, but not exactly sure what caused it.
BT is now on a lap, as is Sab right behind him. So the two Alpines looking to improve. And I do believe BT was up on his lap. He comes around the final corner now. Bit of wheel spin from the Alpine. Can he take provisional pole? No, he can't. And it was only a 43 millisecond improvement. Now over to Sab, who is absolutely flying on this lap and takes provisional pole position with a 27-0. So the championship leader occupies provisional pole. His teammate can only improve by about half a tenth, and that is going to give Sab incredible confidence going into the final runs, as Dan Lovett on an outlap will have seen that pop up at the top of his screen. Will that put some nerves into the Williams driver, as he now knows he has got to set a lap that lights the timing screens up?
Yeah, I think he is starting to potentially see the writing on the wall at this early stage for his World Championship hopes. He's going to begin his lap, so we'll obviously pay close attention to this. But he's got to make sure that this is, at least you would say, in a top 3 or top 4. You would expect Ryan would probably move out of the way for him. But that is why having BT or having Ryan be in front of Sab and BT would have worked well in the position they were in, because Ryan could have at least tried to play the team game. He could still, if he ends up out qualifying Dan. And he does improve, but it's not by very much. So this very much needs to be a strong second and final sector from Dan. We've seen he can pull out some good laps before. Qualifying might not be his strong point, but we know there is pace in there. Can he extract it when it matters most? You've got to make sure through this final couple of corners in at sector 2 not to hit the wall, make yourself have any damage, give yourself a puncture. He gets through it nice and neat. He improves by 2 tenths, but it still doesn't seem enough to put him up there in front of BT and Sab. So he's going to need a monumental final sector here. Can he do it? You've got to be careful about where you pick your braking point. Don't lock up or run wide. He manages to get through well again. He comes to the line. Where is he going to put himself? He puts himself only 5th, so still behind his teammate. Not ideal.
Josh is on his lap and was 22 milliseconds up. He will need the final sector of the gods to go back to provisional pole. He improves by 29 milliseconds. It is not enough to replace Sab. These will be the final runs. Both Alpines are in the pits. Dan will not have another chance either. So that is where they will be. It is all down now to Ryan Brooks, who is the only man in the top 5 that can try and improve. McKellar, or F1 Mikey as he's now known, is also on a lap. He is just going through the middle sector now, towards the end of it. What will the sector 2 split be for the Sauber? He is over a 10th up, and this could displace Dan Lovett even more, and the Williams driver will not have a chance to respond, as the Sauber now comes towards the final corner, picks his braking point, tips it in over the curb. Is there going to be improvement for F1 Mikey? Can he take it up to 5th or even higher? He comes to the line now and goes 4th, so Dan Lovett will start a best of 6th. Now what of Ryan Brooks? Is he up on his lap as he enters the middle sector split now? He's 93 milliseconds up, so he could take 4th place back. But it isn't looking like Ryan is going to be a factor in the fight for pole unless he has a Max Verstappen Monaco-esque final sector, and he's gone deep into the final corner. The Williams struggling for traction as well. Ryan now comes to the line, and it is P4 for Ryan. So there is your order then. Lucho is on a lap and will not finish as he's gone into the wall at the final corner. So the championship leader in the championship finale takes pole position. Sab on top from Josh. BT then in 3rd, who is looking for his world championship. The big shock, Dan Lovett only 6th. And that will be a very interesting dynamic. You could say that could be very similar to Villeneuve and Frentzen at Jerez in 97 for that year's title decider, where they allowed Fisichella to try and attack the Ferraris. Is Ryan going to try and return the favour for his teammate? You would expect so, but Danny's going to have to think of some kind of
phenomenal strategy or hope that there is a level of luck to get up there, because it isn't just, we talk about needing to not just qualify in front, but forget if I'm wrong, but he can't just win and have Sab be second, or one of them can't, whether it's Dan or BT, one of them need to win and Sab be third or lower.
Exactly that. But there is your order then. Sab Gaming takes pole position for the final round. It is Josh in second with CRBT in third. Ryan Brooks in fourth. Mikey Boy in fifth. Dan Lovett sixth. Mr. Jabe seventh. DGH eighth. Harry in ninth on debut. And Meldrum 10th. And that rounds off the top 10 here in Miami. We will now bring you to the standings, where you can see Alpine last week clinched the Constructors' World Championship, but the graphic on the right is what we are looking at. Sab Gaming 6 points ahead of Dan Lovett. Connor Beatty just 1 point behind that. 7 points in the World Championship fight. And like you say, Lewis, the points are different in NRRL. 25 points for winning a Grand Prix, 20 points for second, 18 points for third. So Dan or Beatty need to win this race and hope that Sab finishes third or lower. If you're Beatty, you also need to put Dan Lovett into that bracket. But Dan Lovett can win the World Championship. If he wins the Grand Prix and Sab finishes third or below, Connor Beatty will need to win the Grand Prix, with Sab and Dan finishing below that. Incredible stuff. It's been a brilliant season here in NRRL, and even in the Constructors, it is not over yet, as Aston Martin and Racing Bulls both try and challenge Williams for second place. Mathematically, Sauber are also in that fight as well, but unless some sort of miracle happens, we can't really see that happening. But Williams, Aston Martin and Racing Bulls all in the fight for second place in the Constructors, but our eyes are on the graphic on the right. The coveted Drivers' World Championship, Sab from Dan from BT, and in qualifying today, it was Sab from BT from Dan.
Very, very close fight. Very, very rare that you see a three-way title fight into the final race of the season. Now, if you're Sab, that couldn't have gone any more perfectly. What do you do? Because the pressure is on from this point, losing the title. I mean, from being in the lead, losing the championship before qualifying anyway is a disappointment. But you've got pole. Josh, neither of your title rivals are next to you on the grid. One of them is all the way down in sixth. Surely, he has to have this. There's no. He can't accept anything but winning the title, can he?
Exactly that. Leading the championship by 6 points. Pole position for the Grand Prix. Sab just needs to get on with this and run away. It is the battle for Dan Lovett and Beatty, which will be the one to watch, especially Dan Lovett, because like you mentioned, with Frentzen and co in Jerez, there's still a car between Ryan and Dan Lovett. Mikey Boy's there. So Dan needs to get Mikey as soon as possible, and then maybe they can play that game. Maybe Ryan, with a bit of extra pace, can try and drag Dan towards that fight, or he can just let Dan go. But Dan needs to do the work before he can even think about that happening.
This is the most important start of Dan's career, most likely. With the circumstances he has got, he has to have the best start of his career to have a chance. Because if he can jump fifth, fourth, and put himself potentially into third, then he has a chance. But if he doesn't gain a position, if the worst for him happens and he loses one, he's going to have to get on with this quickly. Or as you say, we could very much have a situation where he has to begin to overdrive and take risks.
Exactly that. But 5 red lights for the Miami Grand Prix then. And it is lights out and away we go. And the pole sitter Sab did not get a good getaway. They are going to be 3 wide into turn 1. Josh goes down the inside. Sab manages to hold on round the outside. So a poor start for the Alpine. But he manages to maintain his lead. Or does he? Because here comes Josh round the outside again. BT's in that fight with them as well. Now to the next corner we go. They are 3 abreast, and BT, with a switchback on the Aston, is up into second immediately. Dan Lovett with a brilliant start, already up to 4th. So the championship contenders, all 3 of them, in the top 4. Josh is the scapegoat in that fight. Will he be able to influence this championship? But the 2 Alpines are leading. It is an Alpine 1-2 here in Miami, and the dream getaway for Sab. BT with a brilliant move. We know he's the master of overtakes in this league. He just puts the car wherever he wants, and it will stick, and he will pull off overtakes. And exactly there, he is showing why he is given that moniker. BT up to second, Sab leads away. It is then Josh. Great start from Dan Lovett up to 4th. But we had Ryan Brooks round. He is now right at the back of the field. And how will that play out? Because he won't be able to help his teammate. Here comes BT, looking down the inside into the final corner. And Sab's gone wide. And through goes BT into the lead of the Grand Prix. And crucially, Josh is past Sab as well. So if the flag were called now, we would be calling BT the world champion. As we end lap 1 and go on to lap 2, BT leads from Josh, Sab then Dan.
I was going to make a point. You said Sab had an ideal start there. I don't necessarily agree with that from his perspective. Good start for his car, but seeing Dan and BT have the starts they did, he would have been dreading that. And as you say, under pressure, we very rarely see Sab make mistakes. But on the biggest night, he has made one that could potentially be costly, because Dan is wheel to wheel and is now past. And the pole sitter, the championship leader, now with all the work in the world to do to get that crown back to Alpine.
Exactly.
He's going to go for it. He can't make the move.
He can't make the move into that corner, but they will now have a very long straight to try and get past. But crucially, for the 2 leaders, BT and Josh, they are a second ahead of Dan. So Dan will struggle to fight the Alpine and the Sauber in behind, and BT and Josh will ensue their fight out front. As we now look to the Aston Martin cruising up towards the rear end of that Works Alpine. To the outside goes Josh, as Dan Lovett is also under pressure. BT, a little bit of contact with Josh there. He just manages to hold on. And Dan Lovett has lost the position to both Mikey Boy and Sab. So through goes Sab again. And he is now reigniting the fight. But Mikey now takes the position away and is through into 3rd.
And Mikey is not the type of driver that is going to care about what is going on in the title fight. He's here to win this race for himself. He will not give one consideration to the championship battle whatsoever. But for BT, what an ideal start for him. Managed to keep his position well and then just forced his teammate into a mistake and is benefiting massively off of that. A proper champion's drive in the first few laps. We've got 54 more before he could potentially be called that. But here is where things will start to get tricky, as a driver like Josh in your mirrors and then Mikey behind him. This is where he really is going to have to test his resolve. Can he hold on to this lead? You cannot make a mistake in this position. I know that we say drivers, they want to win it on track. But at this point, in the early stages, if you're getting put under a lot of pressure, it might be a smarter idea to just not fight it, because the people you've got to fight are Sab and Dan. But then the counter to that is he has to have a couple of cars gap between him and Sab, so he really does need to fight.
Exactly that. Now, while you were talking about that, Mikey has actually brought Sab back into the fight with the leaders, and Dan is falling off. So Dan Lovett, 1.3 seconds off of his championship rival Sab. He is not going to be getting the benefit of DRS, and that will only pull him further away. Mikey sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. BT currently leading out in front, doing a great job as he gains up positions. All drivers in the top 6 on mediums. Harry, also with a good start, has moved himself up into 6th position and will be looking to try and hound some pressure on Dan Lovett. Dan really needs to try and make a move if he is to get back within this fight in the first stint. Like you mentioned, Lewis, a lot of laps left to go in this Grand Prix, but the early stages not going Dan Lovett's way.
Absolutely not. Dropping back, as you say, could be a fairly smart idea if this is intentional. I would say it's probably not. Just drop a little bit further back. Don't get involved in too many collisions. Keep your car in the running. And then towards the end, they've still got over an hour of race time left, you would expect. He has plenty of time to figure something out. But as you say, the early stages do not look good. Josh with DRS and a toe on BT here. Can he make it into the lead? Again, this will be another driver not even slightly considering about the title fight. They want the wins themselves. He is close. He doesn't have much in the way of ERS. He will have DRS, although BT, a better exit, took a wider line into the final corner and has managed to keep hold of the lead. Ryan Brooks makes his way up to 9th, but this is very much looking like a train for the top 4. So I'm going to ask you the question, Jack. You're in Sab's position here. You had an incredible qualifying lap. You've managed to take pole. The start has not gone well for you. You're now stuck at the back of one of these trains. We have McLaren, yellow flag there. Everything seems fine. He's pointing in the right direction again. You're Sab. Great qualifying lap. Took pole. First lap, it falls apart for you. You're at the back of this train. What is your mind at the minute?
I think you've got to try and recharge the battery. Stick it in none while you're down this DRS zone and all the way through the middle sector. And then on that big back straight, deploy everything. You need to gain positions here. Even if it's just into 3rd, you know that you need to finish this race in 2nd or better. And BT currently leading and easily battling away with Josh. Even though Josh has the DRS at a track where DRS is so powerful, BT is doing more than enough to retain the lead. So you've got to see that and start pulling moves yourself. But Sab isn't getting close at all.
And Dan is falling further backwards. We have a safety car called. What was that called for? I can't say I saw. Everyone seems to be pointing in the right direction.
I did not see either, but we now see the top 4 into the pit lane. Dan Lovett, well, he'll be in the pit lane. This will be a crucial call for him, and he does make the call. A little late dive there into the pits. Harry also follows him in and gets a 10-second time penalty for a severe collision with Dan Lovett. Mikey stays out. Oh, no, he doesn't, sorry. My timing screens are absolutely glitching. Paul Codd stays out, and I believe will take the lead of this race. It's going to be very close out of the pits, and yes, he does take the lead, does Paul Codd, so he will negotiate the safety car restart. BT in 2nd. Then I have no grip stayed out. That is going to be music to BT's ears as he's got another car between himself and Sab. Dan Lovett will be happy that the safety car has been called and he is now back in this fight. But as we now look to the penalties, Dan Lovett also has a 10-second penalty.
And we said about in qualifying, was his hopes of the World Championship starting to slip away? We've seen that the NRRL races have huge twists in them with the 50-plus laps. But this, in the early 6, look like it is becoming nearing on not a chance that Dan will walk away with the title. But if you are in the position of Dan or Sab, it's a very, very interesting position, isn't it? Because Dan, at this current point, all hope looks lost. But if you're Sab, you're going to fancy yourself against some of these drivers that haven't been towards the top ends of the grid, like Paul Codd or Mikey, when you get to them. But you're going to need to get through quick, because as we say, even though there's 51 laps left, you're going to say that, say 6, 7, 8 of those will be knocked off due to safety cars or virtual safety cars. You have to take your opportunities when you get them, because even though he's in a luxury position of doesn't need to win the race, he still has a lot of work to do to get back up to second.
Exactly that. It's going to be such a struggle for these drivers. And like you say, Dan Lovett is really going to struggle and is coming back into the pits to serve that penalty. So that is going to demote him nearly to the back of the grid. So Dan Lovett electing to serve the penalty under the safety car. He will go on to another set of new tyres. But horror for the Williams driver as he now comes in to serve that penalty. And this must feel like eternities for the Williams driver, who is now down in 14th. Make that 15th. It's not going to be 16th as Lucho is quite a way down. But while one title rival is second, the other is 5th. Dan Lovett, 10 positions behind that. Heartbreak for the Williams driver after that collision with Harry.
You could also say that this would put him in a position that could potentially clear the mind of Dan, as if you are in this position, all hope looks lost. So the pressure, you could say, is taken off you to where he isn't having to think about every single micro decision he has to make, and could see this pay off in the later stages. So again, it is a double-edged sword. It's a horrible position to be in at the moment. These are long, long races. So in this next 10, 15, 20 laps, the pressure is not on him as much, although he will be looking to carve his way back through the field again. But if you're BT, what an opening 7 laps for you and your title fight, because this has gone exactly the way he would have hoped.
Exactly that. And I mean, you know, he's currently in second. He's got Josh and Mikey between himself and Sab, which would put Sab a net P4 when Paul Codd is dispatched. Obviously, he has not pitted yet. It's difficult to see in Dan Lovett or Sab's eyes what they can do, because BT is driving with absolute class, and while Sab will need to at least make it a 1-2 to try and save his championship that he comes into this race leading, it must be so much pressure on Sab to try and keep himself composed, and especially when it's his teammate as well. He knows him so well. It's going to be just playing on his mind the whole time. And even for someone like Dan Lovett, who's currently sat in 14th after Dinosaur comes into the pits, the pressure must be absolutely mounting for all of these drivers. And fair play to all of them, because a 100% race where you've not only got to battle the mental and physical toll of being in a race for this long, you've also got the pressure of fighting for a championship. So difficult.
One thing I want to ask you as well is, you're in Sab's body, let's say, at the minute. The only on-track fight you have had with BT, you have made a mistake that has cost you the position. What will that do to the mental state of Sab if they get back to being in a wheel-to-wheel scenario again, knowing that if you're BT, you're confident very much more, given you have pressured Sab into a mistake at, let's face it, a corner where it is easy to make a mistake, but very rarely do you see the top drivers make mistakes. What are you doing if you're in Sab's mind, knowing that you've come up against one of your rivals in wheel-to-wheel combat, and you've not only lost out, you're the one that's made yourself cost yourself the position?
It is definitely going to be playing on his mind. I've just heard from my special intel that collision with Dan and Harry, it was a bit more of a racing incident. Harry's got damage because of it. Harry's description is that he came into the pits and Dan was sideways. I can confirm Dan was not sideways into the pits. I was on board with Dan. So, not really sure what happened there from Harry's perspective, but we move on now as the safety car is in this lap, and BT will be looking to get a good start, but he's not had a good restart at all as BT. A hell of a lot of wheel spin, and Paul Codd is clear out in front as we go on to lap 9 of 57 of this Miami Grand Prix, and BT net leads the way, but Paul Codd with a great safety car restart. Harry already up into 6th. Good move from the Haas driver, promoting himself up even with that damage. He's 1.3 seconds behind Sab and will be looking to regain that time lost. Dan Lovett still down in 14th as BT battles Paul Codd for the lead of this Grand Prix. Paul Codd isn't going to want to give this one up, but BT does manage to get his way through. But here now comes Josh, who is also going to look to make the move on the Mercedes. The Mercedes also trying to come back at BT as we head into this very heavy braking zone. Paul Codd can't do anything to challenge BT, and now is Josh just going to get held up a little bit through this middle part of the lap as BT now flies out in front. Sab is still stuck behind Mikey and Paul Codd and Josh, and he is being held up. Is Josh, as now look at the gap, 1.3 seconds out in front for BT. Josh should now get this move done as they now race down towards the final corner in a straight line. Who's got the better straight line speed? Who's going to be last of the late breakers? As there you go, Paul Codd goes wide and into the barriers, and he will surely be into the pits now. He is. Josh manages to get through, but crucially in the lead, a 1.5 second gap for the Alpine of BT.
Again, an absolutely dream restart that could have gone very badly wrong. Making the move on Paul Codd, there was contact at the start of the straight. I believe there might have been a little bit of damage there anyway on Paul Codd's car, and then into the wall just took the whole thing off at the end. Sab, a decent start for him in P4, still not the position he needs. He should have DRS.
Lewis, I'm going to interrupt you. Dan Lovett's back in the pits. So I don't know what's happened to Dan Lovett there. He's obviously had damage somewhere because that was a very, very long pit stop onto a set of hard tyres again. But Dan Lovett, a torrid race, going even worse. He is now 16th place, 10 seconds off of 15th, who is then 16 seconds off of 14th. So Dan Lovett, heartbreak underneath the helmet of the Williams driver. There is surely no way that Dan Lovett gets back into this race.
Unfortunately, I would have to agree with you, as Mikey and Josh going wheel to wheel into the final corner. Mikey gets the move done. Is Josh going to be able to fight it? He will have the DRS down the main straight here. Doesn't have much ERS, neither does Mikey. Too far back to make a lunge. Sab onto the back of this as well, and so is Harry. But if you're Sab and BT, at this point, surely you just have to erase Dan out of your mind. There's too much that's gone on, unless there is a safety car that gets called. But still, there's a lot of work to do in his position. If you're Sab and BT, you just have to now focus on each other, surely. Because, I mean, stranger things have happened in Formula 1, but I don't see a way in which Dan can come back from this.
No, I mean, he'd have to have some sort of Sergio Perez Sakir drive if he wanted to try and still win this championship. But it is going to be very, very difficult for him to try and gain positions here. Sab, however, he needs to gain positions. Lap 11 of 57 of this Miami Grand Prix. He is currently in 4th position behind Josh, who is looking to fight with Mikey. Is there maybe an opportunist move for Sab to try and get involved? But he's got the Haas of Harry on the back of him, who is going to be looking to try and gain positions and prove himself on debut. Damage to that Haas car, but the American outfit always looking to fare well at home. This is going to be difficult for the championship leader.
And Mikey was getting slightly closer to BT. Very much still a fight going on, but not able to get close enough to put him under any real pressure. But BT knows one mistake and he will be all over the back of him, Will the Sauber. But driving very well so far. Driving as if he is somebody not under the pressure of currently being the world champion. This is exactly the type of champions drive you have come to see from many over the years. Just completely calm out front. No real mistakes or anything like that. Just driving faultlessly.
Exactly. And one thing I forgot to mention that me and you have been mentioning quite a lot recently, Lewis. Nobody in this division is a repeat race winner. But here goes Mikey for the lead of the Grand Prix, and he's got it. So up into P1 goes Mikey, and I believe that then swings the championship favour back into Sab's arms.
Very, very close between everyone here. Didn't look like BT put up too much of a fight. I only caught really the end of it. But very, very tight. Every slight decision will have a major bearing. As here comes BT again.
Very
Double locks
deep.
up. Can he keep it out of the walls? He can. But that is not going to help him. And now all of the top 4 separated by just 1.2 seconds. And here is where this will start to get interesting.
I can confirm if BT were to finish second and Sab were to finish fourth, Sab would win the World Championship by 2 points. But BT is not going to settle for second, and he is already coming back at the Sauber through the S's. To the inside he goes, throws it down the inside. BT, the master of overtaking that he is, back into the lead of the Miami Grand Prix. But Mikey will get the DRS and is coming straight back at BT. Down the inside he goes with the DRS. And Josh is now going to the outside of BT. So has BT maybe gone a little bit too heavy? He's not got much battery, his BT. Neither does Josh. Sab is actually the best place here as DGH has managed to get past Harry in all of that chaos. But wow.
Incredible scenes. Is the pressure starting to get to BT just a little bit here? DRS, he is looking like he might take the lead back. He needs to be cautious to not make the same mistake twice. Into the final corner. He manages to navigate it well. Keeps it out of the barriers. Optimal line, you would say there. Mikey tried to switch back. It didn't work. Can he try it again into turn 1? He's getting closer. Not close enough. Was that a lock up there from BT? I believe it was.
It was indeed, and it does look like it is starting to become real to these drivers that they are on the cusp of winning a Drivers' World Championship. And this is where we're going to see the elbows getting out. You saw with BT, the second he lost that lead to Mikey, he was straight going for it at every opportunity he could find. And he finally got it back. But Mikey is not a driver to relent. He will go absolutely hell for leather to try and get this lead back. And he is going to be close enough into the next corner. Down the inside goes the Sauber driver and reclaims the lead once more as Sab is now going at the Aston Martin of Josh. Josh manages to hold on to that position, but BT does not and is back down to second place as we now go towards the back straight. No ERS advantage for BT. He will have the DRS and that will open now. So will BT be able to gain enough as he tries to drain the battery? He won't be close enough towards Mikey. Mikey goes defensive as well to make sure there is no threat. And now we've got DGH going at Sab to try and compound his issues. So action all between the top 5 as we now go to the main straight to start lap 15. BT looking towards the inside. The Sauber of Mikey takes a very wide line and there's contact between them. BT's off the track, manages to rejoin in second place. Sab and DGH are still wheel to wheel through the first sector, and there goes DGH with a massive dive bomb. Contact between the two of them and the Mercedes is through. So DGH now throwing another spanner into the works of this championship fight as he gets past the championship leader. BT now leads this race once more. Does Sab have a reply to the Mercedes as Mikey again retakes the lead? Sab, is he able to sneak it round the outside? Ooh. We're on board with him now. Is he able to try and get past? They're still wheel to wheel. He does manage to make that move stick and he is up into 4th place once more. And there he is, DGH out of the session through the chicane, hitting the wall. And that is a virtual safety car deployed.
And I was on board with BT and Mikey whilst you were watching Sab. BT has damage into the wall at the very tight chicane and has picked up some wing damage. You can see it here. The end plate of that Alpine is gone. How much of a role is that going to play, especially in the first sector where you need the car to be responsive? That is the first sign that potentially this could swing back the other way. But BT, those first 10 laps look so measured, so calm. And now looks to be put under a serious amount of pressure and is making mistakes, and it isn't working out at the minute. Very much just hanging on. But how much longer can he hang on for?
That wasn't a good restart from BT either. Mikey is right on the back of the Alpine and will be going for it, and has much more battery than BT to play with. To the outside he is forced. To the outside he goes. To the lead of the race he goes. Lap 16 he retakes the lead, but BT throws it back down the inside. Not enough grip for the Alpine. Mikey does retake the lead, and behind this Josh is well close to the back of the Alpine and will be looking to put more pressure on the championship contender. As to the back straight we go now. Mikey with much more battery. BT with the DRS advantage. Is he going to be close enough towards the final corner? I highly doubt it, and he won't. So BT does have to give up the lead for now and makes a big mistake through the final corner. Big snap there, rear lockup from the Alpine driver. And this fight is getting feisty.
Very close. Just the mistakes every few corners, it seems to be now. Needs to just chill out, settle down, realise there's still 40 laps left. You can't win the championship on lap 17, but as we've said, with plenty of races, and in this instance, you can certainly lose it. So just try and chill out. Surely that's what you've got to do. But you can also understand it. If you're fighting for the title, you're fighting to be the first champion of the Sunday division. So no matter how long this league is around, you will always be known as the first one. And it seemingly is potentially too much pressure for him.
Here he goes to the outside. He sweeps round. Is there enough grip in that Alpine for him? He is now going to try and turn the outside to the inside. He is very close to the rear of that Sauber, but nothing doing now for BT. But this lap, crucially, Mikey, the Sauber, does not have a massive ERS advantage, and BT is closer. So is the Alpine going to be able to try a move into the final corner? He is certainly going to look for it, and he is going down the inside in the Alpine, makes the move stick, and is back up into the lead of the Grand Prix.
This is just the best type of carnage. You don't know where to look, do you? This is just outrageous stuff. And Sab trying to make his way, although here comes Josh. He manages to get back through. This, again, like I said, you just don't know where to look, do you? This is crazy.
Ryan Brooks is also in that fight now, and we know how quick Ryan can be. He's right on the back of Sab and was jockeying for position with him. So the Williams driver could also be a factor in this championship fight. We know that Dan Lovett is stuck down in 12th and isn't really gaining on Harry, who pitted during that virtual safety car. But Ryan Brooks could try and do his teammate a favour if he can get himself into the lead and slow everyone up, as BT and Mikey are wheel to wheel again, and Mikey gets a penalty and Ryan gets past Sab. So all change at the front as the Sauber gets a penalty, Ryan up into 4th, and the championship really falls into BT's hands now, as he could finish second and still be crowned Drivers' World Champion.
I don't think I've ever seen a title decider in league racing that has been this just up and down, and we're not even halfway through yet. We're only about a third of the way through. What an advertisement this is to be part of the next few seasons and divisions. Obviously, I've seen somebody asking in chat how to join. That we have very well provided the link. As Ryan gets back through on Josh, makes a mistake but manages to keep the position. They're still fighting. Ryan manages to stay in front. But now Sab pits.
That seems like a bit of an early stop for
New
Sab.
wing.
And it is a new wing for the Alpine driver. So maybe some contact that we didn't see there. But crucially, that will demote him down. He will have the gap to Harry. Oh, no, he won't. Sorry. Sab won't have the gap to Harry. Now, this is going to be very close between Sab and Paul Codd. And Paul Codd is into the wall and has lost his front wing. And again, we have a virtual safety car deployed in this Miami Grand Prix.
Now, there's a question I'm going to ask you here, Jack. You are BT. You have seen that your teammate, your championship rival, has pitted. It's been a long stop, so you must have gathered he's changed his wing. You have wing damage yourself. Do you now take the risk, get a new front wing on, get your car a little bit more stable, or do you try and take the advantage of the gap you have and just try and work from it with there? Because personally, I think I'd be pitting.
I'd take the advantage, honestly. BT is evidently working well, even with this damage. He is still fighting for the lead of this Grand Prix. He knows the Sauber ahead of him has a penalty, so I don't think there's any point in pitting, especially when behind you is Ryan Brooks, who is 110% going to try and play the team game as we see BT get back up into the lead. Ryan will be a crucial factor in this fight, because if he can get into the lead and try and slow everyone down, Ryan will be a massive factor. So for me, there's no point taking the risk for BT. He can just come in for his usual stop when he needs to and play everything out as accordingly.
So now, what happens next? Down the main straight, you can see just the speed advantage on the straight between the two. Sauber looking very much faster. Wheel to wheel, not close enough to make a move. Tries to switch back. Can he make it? He cannot. Ryan very much getting involved in this fight. Josh also closing up. So is Jabe. It's just every time you look at that front, very much seems like 3, 4, even 5 drivers at the front. Just impossible to pick a winner.
Exactly, and Ryan being in this fight is exactly what CRBT will not have wanted. As we're on board with Mikey, looking to the inside of the final corner. They both brake about the same time, and there's Ryan locking up and going round. So just as we thought that he would be a deciding factor in this Grand Prix, he is a little bit mistake prone sometime, Ryan Brooks. There's another one for the scrapbook. Round goes the Williams driver, down into 7th, and BT will have a sigh of relief, as now, instead of 5 cars battling him, it will only be 4. BT on lap 21 leads from Mikey, Josh, and Mr. Jabe. And crucially for the Constructors' Championship, Josh and Mr. Jabe, 3rd and 4th, that will be crucial for the Constructors' World Championship as they try and secure 2nd place.
Utter chaos everywhere you look. But we go back to the front two. DRS not using the ERS at this current point, but still looking like he's going to make the move here. Can Mikey get through? He doesn't manage to. Yet he does go off the track, stays behind. Probably the smarter thing to do. He would have probably been forced to give that back. But the amount of pressure BT is under here now seems to be getting back to a stage where he's coping with it well.
Exactly that. It doesn't look like those big dive bombs and those mistakes he was making, Sab has managed to get past Harry for 9th place. So the championship leader gaining positions in this race. Dan Lovett is 5.6 seconds behind that battle as we now go back to the fight at the front, and BT leading this race, coping with the pressure, dealing well.
Very much so. Sab manages to make his way into 9th place. We have a Haas that went round but is going again. That is Astro. Lucho round as well. Manages to keep out of the way of everyone else, but very much proving to be a difficult circuit. Sab sets the fastest lap. Obviously, won't pick up a point for that, but still much a confidence booster. As here we go again then. Round lost count at this point. Very much seems like every lap, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it must be, what, round 44? Because they think that it's okay to fight. You can't do this live on Twitch, guys. This is going to get banned for violence. It's constant, this fighting, but they are still not going to give up. And BT, with stark defense of his lead, manages to retain it. But will Mikey have something to say about that? But look at BT's battery. He has got so much energy stored up. And surely that is going to be a crucial factor in trying to remain in the lead of this Grand Prix. He defends the inside hard. Mikey is nowhere near close enough, and BT manages to stay in the lead. The two Aston Martins working well in 3rd and 4th, trying to secure themselves 2nd in the Constructors' Championship. VCarb also running a very good race in 5th and 6th. Ryan Brooks in 7th after that mistake, looking to fight back. Here we see Sab, who's looking to try and get past Meldrum. Little bit of contact there between the Alpine and the McLaren, but nothing too bad there. And the Alpine is going to look to try and seek on in this race to try and retain his championship lead and be crowned the first Drivers' World Champion.
Absolutely. You can see what this means to those still involved. As we have Stoker round, is this going to call for anything? It doesn't seem like it. He's just gone round where those at the front are coming up. He manages to get going again. Mikey takes the lead. BT gets it back. This is getting very, very close to the limit. Mikey goes off but doesn't get the place back. But this is just, I would love to know how many overtakes these two have committed on each other, because this very much seems like twice a lap, one gets in front, one gets back past. This is just a phenomenal battle to watch.
Exactly that, and this time around, BT again with the battery advantage. Mikey has a little look towards the inside, but isn't close enough to try and make a move stick in the Sauber, and BT will continue to lead this one as we head on to lap 24 of 57. Josh still in 3rd, just not got the pace to try and challenge the two leaders at the minute, as we've got Stoker, who has retired in the pit lane. The McLaren ends his season on a low. We see Harry getting past Meldrum. Sab is up to 8th, now with a 15-second gap to I Have No Grip in 7th. We will probably see that gap tumble quite a bit as Sab continues his charge, but the fight out of the front between these top 4, nearly the top 6, as Ryan begins to pull towards Bracey once more. It is carnage, chaos and speed as far as the eye can see, as we now see Mikey once again looking towards the inside. Going down the inside is the Sauber, around the outside goes the Alpine of BT. BT again with such stark defense of that lead, driving incredibly well, is the Alpine man. He knows this championship now really is his to lose.
Absolutely. We've seen what that has done to him in the early stages. Now something to pay attention to. Sab and Dan 8th and 9th. Still a 10-second gap between them. But if a safety car was to be called soon, that could get very interesting, because whilst They are not in a good position for the title at the moment. How would they approach fighting each other? Surely desperation would set in for those two to get back and into a position they need to. But it very much seems like it is just falling apart for them at the minute.
Exactly that. Sab and Dan, 8th and 9th. One of them 14 seconds off the car ahead. One of them nearly 11 seconds off the car ahead. Both of them really struggling. Sab picked up damage. Dan Lovett had a 10-second time penalty after that collision with Harry towards the pit lane. Harry and Meldrum wheel to wheel out of the final corner, and Dinosaur is involved in that. It's a 3-car battle, and Meldrum is round, and into the wall he goes. Damage for the McLaren driver. 3 into 1 doesn't go, and unfortunately for the McLaren, he is the one that loses out.
Top 3 still fighting hard as ever. Nothing changing at this current point. And this is the BT that we saw in the opening 10 laps. Just that calm, composed. Whether it's because Sab and Dan are now out of sight and he can just start to calm down a little bit, you would expect so. But this is the driver that we have seen most of the time during the season. And this is very much the driver that you would say deserves the title.
Exactly that. He has driven a brilliant race thus far, but we aren't even at half race distance yet as we enter lap 26 of 57. And BT is again under pressure from Mikey, and Mikey gonna look to switch to the inside, make it the outside. Not enough grip for the Sauber. And I must say as well, BT driving exceptionally with that damage on his car as well. He must really be feeling the effects of the tyre wear due to that damage and just the understeer from the damage itself. But he is remaining composed. He is driving a brilliant race as we see the two Haas cars battling once again, and Harry into the wall.
Very, very interesting there. This is a very difficult circuit, very easy to make a mistake and just knock a wall. Can be very costly. Ryan managed to get back up into 5th. But these two out front putting on an absolute clinic. We have Harry sideways in the middle of the track. Is this going to be a safety car? You would expect not, as he's managed to get going again. I don't believe any damage on the Haas.
There is damage to the right-hand end plate. He has lost it.
Wow.
The two leaders fighting again once more. BT and Mikey never giving each other an inch. And crucially, like you say, Ryan Brooks is also about to join this fight as he now looks to the inside of Mr. Jabe. Just not enough straight line speed in that Williams, and he will remain 5th for the time being. But this train now is the entire top 7.
Sensational. Just what you want to see. But at the head of it is the two. Harry picks up a penalty, so not an ideal debut for him. But these top 3, if you're in Josh's position, Jack, you've seen the top 2 fighting a lot more. What do you do to get yourself into those conversations? Because he is sticking with them, but just seemingly can't get close enough to make a move.
Very simply, charging the battery. I mean, you know you're going to be in the DRS. You know you've got the pace of the leaders. Stick it in none for a good while. Charge up that battery. Then you will have the advantage as Harry comes into the pits and retires from the session. That is his debut race over. And it is the worst of the worst performances from the Haas driver. He is out, but we will expect him back on Tuesday nights. And he will look to restore his name in NRRL. As we now watch the battle between the leaders again. Does Ryan have enough to come at Mr. Jabe? He does not. And suddenly the battle between the top 7 starts to stagnate. We
reach that stage in the race we've seen quite often where drivers now start to think about their second stops. Can they eke out a few more laps to try and save some tyres for the end? But still in that DRS train, so they can't get too comfortable. But I would expect that in the next few laps, some moves will start to die down. BT is nearly out of DRS range, actually. He is just. We'll see how that looks by the time they cross the detection point. You can see McKellar now, desperate to get on with it. I think he might have just about stayed in there. He has. But things may be starting to fall away for Mikey. When do they then consider their next stops? You would imagine in the next 10 laps or so.
What I find quite interesting as well is that BT didn't eke out any battery to get that second gap. So whether it was a mistake from Mikey or just incredible pace from BT, he had 80% out of that corner before the DRS zone. So BT didn't necessarily push that hard with the battery to try and get that gap. But Mikey now doesn't have DRS. He somehow manages to use the ERS to stay ahead of Josh. As there, Josh goes into the back of him. And Mikey, a little bit of a half spin there. And he's coming into the pits. As is, who was that? Josh, I believe. No. Or it may have looked like Josh was coming into the pits. I'm not sure. But he stays out. Mikey into the pits after contact. Sab will net gain that position on him. And Dan Lovett coming through the final corner now. It's just a tyre change for Mikey. I highly doubt that he will lose the position to Dan Lovett. But BT now 2.3 seconds in the lead. As within all that chaos, Ryan Brooks managed to get past Mr. Jabe and Josh. Bracey and I have no grip really in this fight too. So BT suddenly sitting pretty again.
Very much so, but is there going to be another turn? It is normal of NRRL that there would be one. So you can't get too comfortable yet, but all signs very much pointing the direction of the Alpine driver. And now surely, let's put you in BT's perspective, JP. You are leading the race. You are on course to be put in the NRRL history books. Lap 29, you've just passed halfway distance. 23 laps on your hard tyres. When do you consider your final pit stop of the season?
It is very difficult because you know that the championship can make or break... not the championship, the strategy, sorry. Can make or break your championship. 1.9 seconds BT has, so he does have a little bit of a buffer to second place, and we know he has got that buffer to Sab and to Dan Lovett. It is going to be difficult for the drivers as BT drifting there through turn 3. And it definitely looks like those tyres need to come off of that Alpine, because for a second there, it looked like I was watching rallying.
Very much so, fighting with the car. Sab picks up a penalty. Wow. Very definitive for the championship fight. We have said things have started to go very much BT's way, but that could be the final nail in the coffin. Down in P6, he is currently 8 seconds off the leader. If you are Sab, where do you go from here?
It is going to be difficult because you would imagine he will need to pit again. So Sab may have taken himself out of this race by pitting to repair that damage. We don't know how bad the damage was, but it just looks like the sting has been taken out of this race as BT now 1.5 seconds clear, Sab in 6th, Dan Lovett in 9th. It's really all started to stagnate, and I don't see any way that Sab or Dan can come back from this.
We've said a lot about how at the start of the race when he took pole, it would be nothing but a failure if he didn't manage to win the title. But from this position, it now flips the other way. If BT, you have the luxury of Dan 30 seconds off you, Sab practically 11 now with the penalty. Surely, with the amount of not necessarily dominance in terms of pace gap, but dominance of always being up in the top two, top three, surely anything but coming home as the first world champion you have to look at would be a huge failure.
I don't think he's going to be thinking about that right now because Ryan Brooks is all over the back of the Alpine and to the inside he goes. And for the first time in this Miami Grand Prix, Ryan Brooks takes the lead. And will we now see some team tactics to try and get Dan Lovett back in this race? He is very far off the lead, is the Williams driver. But with one Williams driver leading, is he able to try and put some pressure on Beatty into making a mistake and trying to get Dan back into this? Beatty will have absolutely none of that and is coming back at Ryan into the final corner. And for probably about the 31st time this race, Beatty retakes the lead.
All composed and calm as Ryan goes into the pits now. I don't know about you, but that very much looked like Beatty baited him in there.
It did. It did really look like it. He went over the white line, did Beatty. And Ryan comes into the pits, as does Josh. So how powerful is the undercut around the Miami International Autodrome? As Beatty stays out, we know that Beatty enjoys an overcut. But with Sab now only 5 seconds off the lead, surely he needs to give himself enough time to come into the pits and make that overtake, because he will be battling with the likes of Ryan and Josh when he comes out of the pits. So he isn't going to be able to gain the time that he would in clean air.
Very much so. That will be on the mind of Beatty. That is actually very impressive from Sab there, because the gap was 8 seconds not only a lap or so ago, wasn't it? So to get it down 3.2, I think the realization has kicked in that you have to act quickly because the championship is slipping through the fingers. You need to do something in this second part of the race to get yourself back in the fight. But it very much looks like he has the pace at the minute.
Exactly that. Sab is gaining very well. Beatty, though, I've been on board with him the last couple of laps. Those tyres are dead. He needs to come into the pits as soon as possible. That Alpine is starting to struggle. Mr. Jabe is gaining on the V-Carb. Sab gaining on this battle, and he is looking to rescue his championship chances. But he has been on those tyres for 14 laps now. They surely will not go to the end of this Grand Prix. He is really going to struggle.
Absolutely. I've been paying attention to BT2, as you say, and you can see on those tyres, the graining, they must feel horrific. 27 laps to have been on them out of 33. Josh picks up a penalty. Surely he's doing much life as he can to make it to mediums for his final stop, you would expect. But will that be profitable to regain the time he's losing? Because the gap is dropping down 3.5 seconds now. And even though there's 2 cars between them, that could get very, very close for BT. Surely, at some point, you have to just take the risk, pit now, and then hope either Sab pits again or that he drops off massively.
I really think he should have undercut, because it would have guaranteed the track position to stay in the lead when everyone else pitted. I really do not see what this strategy is from BT. And he's not in this lap either. So he's only compounding his issues. I don't understand this whatsoever from BT. He could have guaranteed himself the track position. And instead, we are now looking at a fight where he's going to have to come through the field, because he's going to have to pit again, BT. Those tyres are absolutely done with. There is not a chance that he won't be able to take those tyres to the end. So I don't understand it at all.
It is a rather confusing decision. Is he banking on a safety car in these final stretches? They are more than likely, but you can't plan your whole strategy around it. You have to almost develop two strategies, one on the off chance there isn't, and one on the off chance there is. But you have to just, you can't have, you can't take the risk like that, can you? Especially when you're fighting for a title. I understand that these things change midway through the race, especially in a race of this magnitude. But given a race of this magnitude, you can't take a risk like this.
Exactly, and I'm hearing that BT's tyres are around 70% worn. So surely the Alpine driver needs to pit as soon as possible. Sab, you wouldn't imagine his tyres will go to the end, do you? Then you've got the likes of Dan, who has made his final pit stop. Those tyres will go to the end, but he's got to overtake people like Josh, like his teammate Ryan, who's just made the move on Bracy, Mikey, as now BT comes into the pits, as does I Have No Grip. So Sab, the championship leader, takes the takes the Grand Prix lead, and now tries to eke out the advantage. He has got Jabe in his DRS, but BT is going to come out in 7th place. And he's getting held up, isn't he? From the car that retired in the pits. Are you seeing this, Lewis?
He is. I am, yes. This is heartbreaking for BT. That is not his fault whatsoever. And I was just about to say, I wouldn't be shocked if Sab was to pit. And here's the thing, BT's tyres already 5 laps worn. So they should already be rubbered in. But how long can he take these two? Because another 22 laps would be 20... No, it would be, 27 laps. No? Yes. I believe my math is right there. Which is 11 less than what Sab has already done. And gap to the leader is 31 seconds. So he should have the luxury to pit now. But will he do it? I would expect so.
If this is the way that BT loses the championship tonight, that is going to be cruel. It was no fault of his own. And we do tell people in NRRL, don't retire in the pits, as much as it's safer to retire in the pits than retiring on track. If you retire on track, your car pulls to a safe place and there isn't a chance of a safety car. Your car will go ghosted immediately and everything will be fine. But BT, the championship contender, has just been held up through Dinosaur, or I think it may have been I Have No Grip, retiring in the pit lane. And if that is the way that he loses the title, that will be cruel. And I must say, I will not agree with that whatsoever. Sab now leads. Mikey is right behind him and is looking for the race lead. Lap 36 of 57 here, and the Sauber driver is looking very, very racy. Ryan Brooks 5 seconds off this battle. Bracy is 7/10 off of Ryan as Mikey makes his way into the lead of the Grand Prix. And surely, if you're Sab, after seeing that mistake, or not mistake, after seeing that, let's call it an incident in the pit lane for BT, surely you come into the pits, because all Sab has to do is finish ahead of BT and Dan. He doesn't need to worry about winning the race. He doesn't need to worry about being on the podium. As long as he finishes ahead of BT and Dan, he wins the championship. So don't take the risk, Sab. Just get in the pit lane, get some new tyres on, and you're basically guaranteeing yourself a first Drivers' World Championship.
It's difficult, isn't it, with this dynamic of Dan. Dan has caught, or not Dan, sorry, of BT. He's really caught the worst of what has seemingly gone fairly all right. I've seen a lot of drivers retire in the pits, and I have never seen that issue before. So he has caught it at the worst time. But again, it would be, you say you disagree with it, I would have to agree with that. It's difficult, isn't it? It's Massa Hamilton, it's Verstappen Hamilton of the champion hasn't done anything wrong and would deserve to be the champion, but has maybe won it in not the most necessarily fair circumstances, but has benefited off of very unlucky position for their rival. And even though my heart would go out to Beatty for that, you would have to say that Sab would be a worthy world champion, but we still have 20 laps to go.
That is the key. 20 laps to go of this Grand Prix, and Sab now looks like he is sitting pretty. Dan Lovett is not really gaining on Beatty. Beatty is pulling that gap down between himself and Mr. Jabe. But no doubt that incident in the pit lane will be looked at after the Grand Prix, and whatever the cause of it, there will be punishment if needed, but that won't help Beatty at all, and he has got it all to do now if he still wants to claim a first world championship. As Sab now comes into the pits, that's the right thing to do for the championship leader. Where will he emerge?
So I'm on board with Beatty here. I'm watching where he is. He's just coming round that final corner through the S's. If you can keep me up to when Sab comes out,
now.
Beatty crosses
He's out
the line.
already as Sab. So Sab comfortably ahead of his teammate and on better tyres. And is that the writing on the wall here tonight? We know that Sab has a 3-second penalty, but Sab just needs to stay ahead of Beatty. And in these lowly positions of 6th and 7th, I can confirm with you now that the points are 10 points for 6th, 9 points for 7th. So even if Beatty were to beat Sab to 6th, it wouldn't make a difference. Sab would still win the championship. So Beatty has it all to do now if he wants to try and become world champion. But for Sab, surely you just bring this home. You don't take any risk whatsoever, and you just bring this Alpine home, and you will be crowned Drivers' World Champion.
It's a very interesting and bizarre situation to see our 3 title contenders, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and none of them have really been caught up in a major collision.
That is very true,
very odd.
I must interrupt you because obviously BT with his incident in the pit lane, Dan with his 10-second penalty because of the collision with Harry, and then having to pit again. Really, Sab is the only one that's been incident-free. The championship leader is really the only man that hasn't had anything go completely wrong for him. He had that lock-up in the battle with BT, but apart from that, he's just done his job. You know, there's been a long time in this race that he hasn't been in position to win the World Championship, but benefiting from, I must say, a large amount of good luck. And, well, he is now in position to win the World Championship.
Very difficult, isn't it? Because it is a sour end to what has been a great season if that is the way the title is decided. But Sab would very much be a worthy champion, wouldn't he? So it's a very difficult position to be in. We've been here a couple of times in Formula One, but it's difficult, isn't it? Because all 3 would have been worthy world champions, none more so than each other. But this isn't the end you want to see.
Exactly that. It's really taken the sting out of this Grand Prix, as now there aren't really any on-track battles going on. Closest battle is Ryan and Josh for second. Ryan is gaining on the Aston Martin. Not a move into turn 1. He will have to wait a little bit longer if he wants to take that second place.
Yeah, it is just there's not much to look at this rate in terms of on-track action. But as we say, like, it's very difficult, isn't it, Jack? As Sab would be, we're not trying to take away from Sab's moment here. He would very much be a worthy champion, and he hasn't done anything wrong here. But for the title to be decided like this is on the cap off to a tremendous season. Meldrum
safety car deployed!
And now a safety car called.
So that now throws everything up into the air. With 17 laps to go in this Grand Prix, Meldrum retires. The safety car is out. Beatty and Dan Lovett's races are saved. And Sab will have his head in his hands as he now realises what is to come. And suddenly, I would say the pendulum swings to Beatty, as he's the only man without a penalty. So just as we're explaining that this championship has somewhat had the sting taken out of it, and it's going to be incredibly difficult for nor Sab or Beatty to try and get back in this race, the racing gods have absolutely blessed us, and suddenly the game's never been so back.
And I would actually have to say, not only does this bring Beatty back into play, Dan also now I think is in a decent position to where hard tyres, they will go to the end for sure.
Sab
Mediums
pits.
potentially up in the air. Sab does pit, so that should guarantee him to the end. But Dan doesn't look like he's in a terrible position here, does he?
Beatty also pits. Beatty also comes into the pit lane. Soft tyres go on to Sab. Beatty surely onto the softs as well, you would imagine. Does Dan love it come into the pit? He does not. And in my opinion, opportunity missed there for Dan.
And he doesn't pass Sab either. So is Dan banking on Sab and Beatty pushing so hard their tyres burn out and he then takes the advantage? I can kind of see where he's coming from. But given his tyres, even though he hasn't had to push, say, that much, still 12 laps worn. So I can't say I agree with that decision. I'd have pitted if I was in his position as well, just to be safe. Even though you'd be last, you would be straight on the back of them. But this is just impossible to call, isn't it? From at one point in this race, it looked like Beatty had it in the bag. Then it looked like it had gone back to Sab. And now, any one of these three, you would say they have fairly even odds.
Exactly that. I would say Beatty may be at a bit more of an advantage because of the lack of penalty. But it all depends where they end up. They are the only three drivers that pitted. No, only two drivers that pitted, sorry. Sab and Beatty. So they are on the newer rubber. You'd imagine they will make their way through. But it completely depends on where they finish and what points are shared between them. Because at this current moment, if Beatty were to finish 6th with Sab in 7th, it would still be Sab that would take home the championship trophy. So it all depends where these guys can finish.
Absolutely. I think it doesn't shock me that those two were the only two that pitted, because those at the top, Ryan Brooks, Mr. Jabe, Mikey, Josh, even Bracey, they're going to be thinking only for the win, whereas these last three are not thinking about the win whatsoever. They're thinking about getting into the position for the title. If the win presents itself, yeah, they would take it. But I don't think they're even considering victory at the minute. They're considering, if you're saying Sab's boots, where is Dan? Where is BT? What is the points gap? Because they don't have the luxury that we do of just opening up what the points are. They probably don't know themselves.
Exactly that. They will know going into this race where they are in the championship and what they need to do to win. But you would imagine, because I would personally only do this, I'm only working it out if all of us finish in the top 3. Or if I'm someone like Dan or BT, I'm working out if I win, where do I need Sab to finish? I'm not thinking about, oh, what happens if I finish 7th? Because that's not what's going through my mind. And BT, who was leading this race for oh so long, and it was all going to plan, and he would have known that it was going to plan, that massive rush of adrenaline and high coming down in the pit lane, now surely the adrenaline ramps back up as the safety car is in this lap and Ryan Brooks will lead them away, weaving to try and get some temperature into their tyres. 8 drivers remain. 16 were lining up with us today. Only 8 of them are managing to make it home. Lap 42 of 57. And this is incredibly hard to call. I don't think I'd put any money on it, even if I were a gambling man. Ryan Brooks from Mr. Jabe, Mikey and Josh, Bracey, Sab, Dan Lovett and Beatty. And Ryan has well and truly gone. And he has left Mr. Jabe in the dust. Mikey didn't get a great restart either. I'm on board with Sab, Beatty, who is already looking at Dan, and down the inside goes Beatty. There was a little bit of moving under braking there from Dan Lovett, and that's not what you want to see. But Beatty, immediately the opportunist, straight past one title rival. Now his eyes lock to his main championship rival and his teammate.
Very, very interesting. I think this might be one of the only safety car restarts where we're paying more attention to those at the back than at the front. But this is where everyone will be looking. As here now comes Sab on Bracey, looking to just build a little bit of distance here between his title rivals. He isn't going to throw it up. That is probably the smarter thing to do. But they all remain 6th, 7th, 8th. Everything going well for Sab at the minute, but he needs to build that gap, doesn't he?
Look how far Dan Lovett's already falling off. I really thought it would be a struggle for him, and I thought it was an opportunity missed when he didn't come into the pits. And he's basically proving my words right. 1.8 seconds the gap now, and I think it is safe to rule Dan Lovett out of this championship fight as Beatty with a massive dive bomb down the inside. We call him the master of overtaking, and that is why Beatty up into 6th, past his championship rival, fastest lap of the race for the Alpine driver. Now he's going for it on Bracey, and 2 dive bombs in the space of 2 corners. Beatty, wow. What an overtaking masterclass he is showing us around the Miami International Autodrome. He is absolutely going for it here, as there we see Mikey going round. That's another position for Beatty. I am at a loss for words.
Absolute insanity with 13 laps to go. And now it swings back the other way. 2 cars in between the Alpines and a 3-second gap. Surely now it goes back to Beatty's to lose. Just absolutely unbelievable scenes.
Absolutely incredible. And now with DRS enabled, he will look to get on the back of Josh. The soft tyres presenting so much grip to Beatty here, and he is absolutely flying. A joy to watch this Grand Prix as he now looks to gain on the Aston Martin, and he is gaining on the Aston Martin. Josh goes defensive. To the outside goes Beatty. Very late on the brakes from the Alpine driver, swooping round the outside. A little bit of a wiggle from traction there, but to the inside of the next straight he goes. He gets the DRS. Beatty is back up into the podium places, and he is putting on a champion's drive here tonight. From heartbreak to elation for the Alpine driver, and now he chases down Mr. Jabe and Ryan Brooks. I cannot believe what I am watching. CR Beatty take a bow.
In a video game or in real life, this is one of the greatest title deciders I have ever seen. Absolutely incredible from start to finish. It has swung to where we've said surely it goes towards this man, surely it goes towards Sab, surely it goes towards Beatty. We must have changed our opinions countless times to the point where you just can't call it at the minute. Because even though it looks very much like it's going to be Beatty's day, given how this race has thrown up us surprises, somebody will crash in the next 3 laps and it will swing the other way.
Sab is 1.5 seconds off of Mikey. He's not gaining. I'll tell you who is gaining. It's Beatty again. To the inside of the Aston Martin he goes, and he's through into second. And the championship trophy, he's got one hand on it as we now go on to lap 46 of 57, and Beatty is absolutely flying, but he is not done yet. He is not satisfied, and he is right on the back of Ryan Brooks. So much grip coming from those soft compound tyres. And while Sab struggles to get even past Mikey, who has had a spin and been on those mediums for 10 laps, BT is absolutely flying and will not relent with anything less than a Drivers' World Championship and a race win. He has put on an absolute clinic today, and there is one move left for him to complete, and here he goes to the outside of Ryan. BT retakes the lead of the Miami Grand Prix. Incredible stuff, but Ryan is going to fight this and come back at him. He throws it down the inside. BT with the switchback. They are wheel to wheel. Ryan manages to hold on, but now to the long straight we go, and surely the defence will be that much harder for Ryan as we now come to this straight. ERS enabled for BT. DRS, the big letterbox on the rear wing, will open itself now. And here we go then. And on lap 46 of 57, the comeback is complete for BT. And he retakes the lead.
Oh, but he loses it straight back to Ryan. I was just about to say, this is the greatest drive I have seen in league racing by some distance, but to have that incident in the pits, think of what that would have done to the mindset of him with the final few laps, to then get himself back into a position to where he was even fighting, to then now he picks up a penalty, but at this rate it doesn't look like it's going to matter with just how well he has come through the field. Absolutely incredible scenes.
I think that penalty is going to matter, Lewis, because look at the gaps. If we look at the gap to the leader, it's a 10th for BT, who is going to go for it again. But look, 3 seconds would drop him down to 5th behind Mr. Jabe. So he needs to clear Ryan, and he needs to get on with it. Because if he were to finish 5th, he would not win the World Championship. Contact there between the two of them, and Ryan has put himself in the wall intentionally. That brings out the safety car, and even more controversy now. Ryan should not have done that under any circumstance, and that has to be punished. He was stuck in the wall. It wasn't an intentional crash from BT. I can tell you that for a fact. Dan Lovett picks up a drive-through, but Ryan Brooks taking himself out intentionally. And I'm going to be completely honest, if I'm the league owner, get him out. That is unacceptable from Ryan here tonight.
I didn't have a great view as I was on board with BT. I'm not trying to point fingers here. Did Ryan try and take BT out there?
It looked close.
That very much looked that on BT's onboard. I saw Ryan cut across the curb, and I thought it was just to try and keep the position. But it very much looked like he tried to hit the back of him there and at least spin him round.
But now the interesting thing is with this safety car as well, Lewis, Josh, Mikey, Sab, Jabe and Lovett all onto new soft compound tyres. So BT, who has already had the championship trophy ripped away from him once, is it about to happen again?
At this point, I don't want to have to say what I think is going to happen, because it will just swing the other way within 9 laps. And I want our lovely viewers to at least think I know what I'm talking about. So for my own knowledge, I'm going to refrain from saying who. But this is just chaos.
Absolute chaos indeed. And obviously, as commentators, we will try to remain as unbiased as possible. But when you see something like that, an intentional crash, even whether he was trying to take BT out or not, an intentional crash in a race where you know it's the championship finale and everything is so close is completely unacceptable. And we have to make that known, because that cannot be seen again in NRRL. Action must be taken. But we will now bring ourselves back to the racing action. Lap 48 of 57. BT with it all to do now. He has got the older tyres. he has got a 3-second penalty. Luckily for him, though, there are quite a lot of drivers with penalties. Mikey, Sab, and Josh. And I believe Dan has one as well. But obviously it will pop up and show that he's got the drive-through at the minute. As BT there overtook the safety car. He's very lucky not to be disqualified for doing that. I don't know if there was some lag or something going on. But BT, let's say he keeps the position, but manages... Yeah, so if he stays ahead, he will drop to, say, 3rd. If Sab were then to finish 6th or 5th, I do believe you would still be calling BT World Champion. So I really don't know what's going to happen here. It is all going to come down to these final few laps. And you just don't know how to call it.
It just, yeah, as you say, pure insanity. This is one we're going to be looking back at for a long, long time. And I think this is far and above the greatest NRRL race so far in our short history. We have many more to come in the future, but I find it difficult with the stakes to top this.
Exactly that. The stakes have never and can never be higher. We have had chaos. We have had controversy. We have had absolute magic. Only in this race. I'm not even talking about the whole season. This single Grand Prix has had all of that. And if you look at the season overall, it only multiplies that factor. But we are going to have 7 racing laps to decide the World Championship in Season 1. BT has the track position. Sab and Dan have the better, faster tyres. I think you can take Dan Lovett out of that. He's got a drive-through. So it comes down to Alpine versus Alpine. Sab versus BT. One common goal. One World Championship. One single team. Last week, they worked together to win the Constructors' Championship. This week, they do battle to try and fight each other for the Drivers' World Championship. And BT leads us away then onto lap 50. And Mikey immediately gets himself past Bracey. Sab is in that fight and BT is pulling himself clear of Josh, who managed to get past Bracey. He was the other man that didn't pit. And Josh, we know, is absolutely rapid. And on fresher tyres, it is only going to compound those issues for BT. 2-lap-old softs for Josh. 9-lap-old softs for BT. And here goes Josh then towards the inside. The Aston Martin driver, it's an easy move for him. And Josh moves into the lead of the Miami Grand Prix.
Absolutely incredible stuff. He has had a great race. While we haven't had much focus on him due to the title fight, you would expect that he is going to be up there for next season. He's been incredibly consistent, always being towards the top. But you still have to say that this is not over yet between Josh and BT. BT will want to win the title by winning the race.
Exactly that. And as things stand now, because of all the penalties, it's just too close to call. Mikey is also right on the back of BT now. Sab is right on the back of Mikey. So this is not over yet. And I do think this is going to come to the conclusion of what Alpine driver is going to finish ahead on track here, which is exactly how we want it to be. Sab on the faster, fresher tyres. BT with the track position and the car between them, but he is going to struggle to keep the Sauber and his Alpine teammate behind as we now go onto the straight. Is Mikey close enough to try and make a move? He's deploying the overtake. He is looking to the inside and the Sauber goes through. Sab isn't gaining enough, but BT now looks to the outside. Not enough grip for him. Mikey moves up into second place and Sab now is right on the back of his teammate and championship rival. We know that if Sab finishes ahead of BT, that is championship over. Sab will win the title here tonight.
You would very much expect that will be playing on the mind with 6 laps to go. But what can BT do in this position?
He's got to gain position. That's the answer, because if things even finish as they stand now, with BT in 3rd and Sab in 4th, Sab would win the World Championship. So BT needs to start gaining positions. I think this is really swung in the favour of Sab, because BT would need to win the Grand Prix if Sab finishes 4th. Because 20 points for 2nd, that would only give him a 5-point gain. He's 7 points behind. So he will not win the World Championship even if he finishes 2nd. And Josh is 3.3 seconds up the road.
There's not much he can do. Desperation, as we say, will start to creep in with only 5 to go. But as you say, he needs to gain positions. But at this current point, it doesn't look like he has the pace. Have those soft tyres seen the end of their peak? And this could be the final nail in the coffin, as his teammate right on the back of him will have DRS. Doesn't look like he's pulling up to him. They seem... Oh, he is now. Isn't going to be close enough to make a move. But they've got to be careful here, is that even though Dan Lovett is quite a ways back, if these two take each other out, you know where that goes.
Exactly that. But here comes Sab now towards the outside of turn 1. He's looking to swoop around the outside. The gap isn't enough. It slowly closes up and Sab has to stick behind. But BT is beginning to struggle. He will want to battle his teammate just as a last sort of, well, you know, you won the championship, but I did beat you in the race. But Sab will not give this up, and they are oh so close to each other as we now go to this next straight. DRS will be enabled for Sab, and he is gaining on his teammate. The gap ever dropping, and here comes Sab then. The 2 championship contenders wheel to wheel, and Sab goes down the inside. BT now switches to the inside here. They are wheel to wheel, and there's contact between the two of them. BT manages to get back through, but the first glimpses of fire in the ashes, and the 2 Alpine teammates collide as they fight for the World Championship.
You just cannot call it, but it very much seems like BT is starting to understand that the championship is slipping away. So as you say, trying to give a piece of, well, yep, you did win the title, but I didn't make it easy for you. And it is just incredible. I'm lost for words.
Lap 54 of 57 here. Josh leads from Mikey Boy. Then it's BT, then Sab, then Bracey in 5th. Mr. Jabe in 6th, and Dan Lovett in 7th. And I'm sure Dan Lovett, he will have had his head in his hands from the word go. His race has not gone well at even 1 point of this Grand Prix. And the battle really has been between the 2 Alpines, as Sab is now very, very close to the back of his teammate once more, and a good exit. He is only 3/10 behind. And now with the DRS wide open, Sab's looking to go at his teammate again. Round the outside, he chooses to elect this time. BT late enough on the brakes to hold him back. And BT is doing enough of a job to defend. But Sab is doing enough to win this world title. BT will know that if there's contact, both of them need to go out. And BT needs to try and survive, because Sab, all he needs to do is sit behind. He doesn't even need to overtake his teammate. his championship rival. He can sit exactly where he is and he will be crowned world champion. As we move on to lap 55 of 57 now, it is getting oh so tense as we enter the final couple of laps of this Grand Prix.
And it is difficult to really know where to look, but your eyes are on these two. Nothing really working in the way at the minute for BT. It looked so good at one point. It looked like a dead certainty. And now it looks very much the other way, as they are close to Mikey, but just nothing in the way. Now, I've been trying to figure this out, but I can't say it has really worked out. So maybe you will know, Jack. If BT was to somehow get Mikey in these final couple of laps, would he end up winning the title if he finished second and Sab was fourth?
No, I've already covered that. It would be a 5-point difference, with BT being 7 points behind. Sab would win the championship on 2 points. So BT would have to win this race. But Josh, 8.7 seconds clear. You cannot imagine that's going to happen. As now, BT does go at Mikey. He does take second place back, but it's just not enough for him.
And even worse is Mikey loses both positions. So that one moment of potential just slips away. And with 2 laps to go, I don't think there's any world in which the outcome is anything but Sab Gaming as your world champion.
CRBT has just got to be saying prayers in the cockpit at this point that Sab makes some sort of mistake, has some sort of crash. Maybe Mikey goes into the back of him or something. BT needs a miracle. He has been a deserving winner of this race and a deserving world champion, but cruelly, through 2 incidents that were no fault of his own, it has been ripped away from him. He was stuck in the pits because of a car that retired in the pits, which is against the rules. He then has suffered to Ryan Brooks intentionally crashing, trying to take him out. And BT has had this championship ripped away from him. But for Sab, it will be absolute elation as he will become the inaugural NRRL World Champion. Josh, however, has had quite the quiet race because we've been focusing on the championship, but an incredible drive from the Aston Martin driver as they, I believe, will secure second in the Constructors' World Championship. He begins his final lap now, and what a drive from Josh to bring it home and win the final race of the season. And that will be a massive confidence booster as we head into next season.
Absolutely. We've said that he very much, if he can just iron out some of those mistakes in the races, he very much has the pace to be up there. I would expect that will be what he looks at in the off season to think, why wasn't I in this fight? I was towards the top a lot of the time. Why was I not in with an outside shot going into the final couple of races? But yeah, it's been a quiet one because typically when you win, you will get a lot of focus, but our focus is on those at the back in third now. Go unnoticed that he has absolutely deserved this race win. Sab gets into second. BT, I think, is still fighting, but as you say, BT will feel hard done by. But for Sab, I think we have to make sure to say that it's not lucky for him. Any one of these 3 would have been a worthy world champion. And on the day, you know, they both had times where they dealt with bad luck. BT perhaps a little bit worse, but Sab has done everything he needed to do.
Josh comes round the final corner. A great drive from the Aston Martin driver. He becomes the first repeat winner of the season and wins the Miami Grand Prix. But this season has had magic, controversy and chaos. And standing tall at the top of it, Sab Gaming is your inaugural World Drivers Champion. Take a bow, young man. You have done it. Alpine complete the double, a Drivers' World Championship and a Constructors' World Championship, and Sab Gaming is your world champion. Take a bow, take many bows. Sab Gaming, you are the world champion.
Sensational season for Sab. He had the advantage coming in to this weekend. It looked like all hope was lost, but he stuck it through to the end as a true champion does. And that is what causes him to become the first world champion. And that will be something that, whilst we are here now, when we are long gone, that will be remembered forever. He will always be the first champion. What a season. Very well deserved. Congratulations.
And I must give a big load of props to BT, who had this race won on multiple occasions and in turn had this championship won on multiple occasions. He will feel incredibly hard done by. 2 strokes of bad luck, or not even bad luck, 2 strokes of other drivers breaking the rules has cost him a world championship tonight. He will be incredibly disappointed, but through no fault of his own. And BT, if you are listening, if you are watching, keep your head held high, because you at one point, at many points, were going to be the Drivers' World Champion, and there are many more seasons for you at the front. But thank you everyone for tuning in tonight. We have been JP and Lewis, your commentators. Thank you very much for joining us. Sab Gaming is your world champion for the Sunday division. Alpine take the constructors. We will be back tomorrow, but for Sunday's division, that is the season done. Miami playing host to an incredible race, and Sab, through thick and thin, coming out on top. That is your lot then from us. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you tomorrow night. Take care.